Hi and welcome back to my channel. I'm Tony, and as you know, I'm building another 1:6 scale full metal tank from Armortek, and this time it is the Jagdpanzer 38 or the Hetzer. And in the last session we'd built and assembled all of the wheels, got them cleaned up, all the hubcaps, masked them off ready for painting, and we also assembled the two drive case units. But unusually this time I'm not installing them onto the tank, because I'm going to follow the instructions that Armortek quite clearly lay out, suggesting that the sprocket wheel itself gets installed on this ahead of going onto the tank. So they're done, and then everything else, and today's session is all about getting all the other components built, assembled, prepped, cleaned or whatever, ready for painting, because they all need to be painted ahead of putting them on the tank. So that's going to include two of these little roller wheels, top roller wheels they're called, which support the track on the top of the tank. There is the sprocket, which is made up of the main hub and two sprocket rings. Now obviously there must have been a problem in the past, because what Armortek have done now is substituted what comes with the kit in aluminium with steel sprocket rings, which are brilliant. So you know, as in their normal fashion, there obviously was a problem. They've resolved it. So if you're going to buy one of these kits or thinking about getting a Hetzer kit, you will actually get a set of the steel rings along with the aluminium rings when you receive your delivery. So that's that. And the only other part that we're doing today is the idler wheel. The idler wheel is very simple. It's only made up of the main hub, a couple of ball bearings, a bit of cleaning, and then that can be masked off ready for painting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to reset the camera, zoom in, and we can start building. Right, I've already gone ahead and assembled one of these little top roller wheels. Very simple assembly, nothing in it really. And as you can see, I've masked off the tyre. I'm actually thinking about putting these onto the tank ahead of painting. I'll probably decide that once I've done the other one. But yeah, very simple process. So you have the main housing, you have the main axle, you have a bearing, you have a brass bush, and then you've obviously got the securing washer and bolt to put it together. So normal as normal. Just going to give these a bit of all these bits a bit of a clean up, especially where the bearing is going to have to be glued inside the housing. That needs to have a really good adhesion, and likewise with the bush. So that's that. And just wipe my finger around that just to keep that clear. So that's just all cleaned up. Now the next thing to do, the way I'm going to do this is obviously we've got the bearing that's going to go in there, but before we do that I'm just going to deburr the edge of that just to make sure that the bearing goes in. Whoops, excuse me. The bearing goes in nice and easy. And I'm also just going to take the edge off this so that the bush can go in. So just going to try and test fit that bush, and it will go in nice, and the bearing should go in. What I'll do is I'll use the axle like that just to help guide it in, and I think that's going to go in. Yeah, it's going to go in lovely. So that's that. So the first thing we do now is just glue the inside of the ring or the housing. Some Loctite. I don't know what it is. I'm just always a little bit nervous of when the glue comes into play doing these bearings, but so far no real major dramas. So that's this. Just going to use that to guide that bearing into position like so, and what I'm going to do is pop that axle out, and then just holding that with another wooden dowel, just make sure that that is tapped in place. That looks good. Looks like it's up tight in there. Now, little brass bush. Tiny little fragment of metal in there, a little shard. Just using the nozzle of the super glue spread that around. Again, a little bit of just needed to be cleaned. That then goes onto that. That goes in. Just give that a bit of a tap. That's it. That sends it home. So that's it. That's the bearing and the brass bush installed. And then the final part, in fact, yeah, the final part is this little axle that goes through there, as you can see. Then the wheel goes with the recess on the outside, little rubber wheel. And then we have this little washer. Actually, that's got a bit of it needs to be cleaned up on the back of that, so I'm just going to spin that around, just using my mini file. I want that to sit nice and flush. That's better. And thread locker. Load up my fixing. Almost time for another tube of this. Another bottle of this, I should say. They're just holding the back of the axle to make sure that's been pushed forward, and screw that in. Just slacken it off a tad. That's it, that's better. Right, so that's that. Nice and simple. Now the only thing I'm going to do now is to mask this off, so I don't get any paint on it. I've decided I'm going to install these onto the tank. So when I'm painting the bottom of the hull, I'll pick up the paint on this as well. Let's go around and just cover the bits that I don't want to get paint on. Obviously I want the main hub to get painted. I'm still trying to make up my mind on what colour to do this tank in. I have got some paint left over, quite a lot of paint left over from the Tiger, so in the interest of saving money and the environment and all that, I'm considering certainly giving it a base coat with that, because it seems that in the books that I've got, it does seem that would be the base coat often used, and then camo was applied afterwards. Now, getting the camo onto the tank, or even if I do go for the Russian front, the white finish, I'm fairly confident that I can do that after I've applied the base layer of paint, if you like. But it's all in the mix at the moment. So just want to get some masking tape all the way around this. And that's the last bit there. And just fold all that back up. I mean, this is going to be a nightmare to get off once it's painted, I assume, but I'd rather do this than get paint anywhere that I don't want to get the paint. So that is it. So that's that. So they're both done, and I will probably install those onto the tank. So the next thing will be the sprocket wheel. Right, so really simple, hopefully. You've got your two sprocket rings, you've got your sprocket hubcap, and you've got all your various fixings that you're going to need for this. But before I do that, I'm just going to give these things a bit of a clean up. I'll do the hub first. I don't know if you can see, but there's a lot of residue inside here. I don't think that's going to affect the performance of the tank, but it will potentially affect the how the paint adheres to the metal. So just give this a bit of a clean, and then what I'll probably do is I'll probably put the first sprocket ring on, in real time, and then I'm going to ask Ben to speed up the whole process, because I should imagine it'll be quite a tedious thing to watch. And that's that. I just find that using a tool, any tool with a point, or sort of a narrow point on the end, helps get into those little nooks and crannies, shall we call them, to give it a good clean. Now this part is going to need to be cleaned really well, because you've got this the keyless bush, if you like, locking bush that goes into this, and I need that to have a really firm grip, because it's in there. I don't think there's any other way of describing it under its own friction, if you like. I will double check on the instructions when I get to that point, just to see if there's anything else required as far as Loctiting it into position or anything like that. But we're not there yet. I'm going to get all these things assembled, painted, and then we'll worry about that. It's just a bit of cutting compound grease on, or oil if you like, on these steel rings that just needs to be cleaned off. Again, not for the performance, it's just so that when well, for handling actually, but also when we come to paint. So that's that all cleaned up. Now on the other sprocket rings, the aluminium sprocket rings, they do tell you to file the edges so it locks into the, binds with the track perfectly. But I'm going to have to do the same on here. It looks like one of them has been done already, which is this one. I can see there's been a machine applied to it, but I can't see it on this one. So I will have to to do that. So it's just a matter of basically chamfering the edges off of this so it does bind with the track. Just having a look at the other track rings. So yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but they've obviously pre-machined this edge, whereas that one, I don't know if you can see that, probably doesn't sharpen the camera, needs to be done. So I'll just put that on my bench, but I'll do that as part of the time-lapse part, so I won't bore you with that. So we'll use this one and we'll use this one. So really now the only way to describe this is it goes straight on top of the hub, but obviously with the recess sort of pointing out, you don't want to be putting it on that way, but it's fairly obvious which way it's got to go. And the little cap fixings come in from the back of the hub, so that's that one. And I'm going to start off by just placing one of those fixings through the sprocket ring. Try a little bit of, actually probably a lot more than I wanted to put on there, little thread locker, but we'll clean that up, no problem. Just hand wind that in, clean up that excess, and then I'm just going to tighten that, not too tight, just to stop, if that's it. And that just allows me then to move this sprocket ring around to be able to locate another fixing. Now I'm going to go directly opposite, holding it from the back. A little bit of thread locker on that. Wind the nut on. And then just tighten that up, but not too tight at this stage. What I want to do now is just make sure by looking through, if you can see that, just looking through, making sure that the holes align all the way through, all these holes here, and they do. So we'll carry on. I'm just randomly picking spaces now, just to clamp it down equally, top and bottom sides, or 4 points. And once we've got these 4 fixings on, I'll be quite happy then to start tightening these up. The old sausage fingers really get in the way sometimes. I'm trying to do this so you can see it, but at the same time I have to be careful I don't make it awkward for myself. So hopefully you can see this. Me struggling with getting a nut on. There we go. Just double checking they're all aligned, and they seem to be pretty good, so I'm going to tighten those up. So I want to get that sprocket ring clamped as tight as possible to the hub, and like securing it in these 4 points, and get you a nice tight fit. And I'm just going to have a look through that, and I'm happy with what I'm looking at is the junction here, to see if there's any gaps, and there isn't, so it's a nice tight fit connection between the sprocket ring and the hub. So we'll carry on. It's going to be exactly the same process for the opposite side, other than it will be a little bit awkward because we obviously got one of the sprocket rings already installed. I think there's 16 per side, I think. So a lot of fixings, but you know what, in comparison to building the wheels on on the larger tanks, this is very straightforward, actually quite enjoyable. So if you are, I mean, I don't know how many of you out there who are actually building these tanks. I mean, some of the guys that are commenting on my channel are clearly building various different Armortek kits. But and I don't know how you find it, but I just find it just a super thing to do when the weather's terrible, and it just breaks up the monotony. We're just coming into the winter here in the UK, and it breaks up the monotony of sort of dark, dirty, wet winter sort of weekends, and it's great because you know you can't really work in the garden, and you know, what else are you going to do if you're a hobbyist like myself? So what I'll do is I'll ask Ben to speed this whole process up, because you will find this tedious and probably get fed up of me waffling on. So that's both of the sprockets now completed. Very simple, just a little bit tedious. I thought it would just be better to speed that process up. Now the only other thing to, well, apart from the keyless locking bush which goes through here, which we're not going to touch just yet because that's only going to be when we install this sprocket onto the drive, the sprocket onto the drive case itself. And there's a bit of setting out and a bit of working out to do for that, so we won't be doing that today. This is all about just getting things ready for painting. So you have these two little really nicely made hubcaps which basically drop into this. Obviously that'll be lined up so that it'll look, I think that looks quite smart actually. So just pop that back through. But I'm just going to do a bit of cleaning up on these, and then we've got more of the dummy nuts to go on to the hub. So they actually don't perform anything other than decorative detail. And then there's obviously a countersunk hole here countersunk hole here. So that secures this hubcap onto, I don't know what yet, but I'm sure we'll work that out in time. So just going to clean these up. And then what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to use these to help me mask off the inside of this for when I'm painting, because I do not want to get any paint inside this hull, the hub, because that's where the taper lock, or not the taper lock, but the keyless lock needs to go. So it's vital that that is just bare metal, nice and clean, grease free. Got a lot of compound left over on these from the, sorry, let me move these out of the way. Yeah. Just important, not so much the back, but the front certainly, and certainly here, because that's where we're going to be using to glue the, just there we go, that's what I'm looking for. That's what we're going to be gluing these little dummy studs into. So it's at this stage of the build where I know I said it earlier, but you start thinking, well, it hasn't really moved on that much, but you know it has, because we're doing all these bits here. So that's as clean as I'm going to get that. Clean up the next one. It's quite a nice detail actually. And you can see just by looking at that, you know, the tracks compared to compared to the sprocket on the Tiger. The Tiger's about there somewhere, as wide as that, and the M26 is slightly narrower. But this, obviously, the tracks are quite small. But I think that's what made it so agile. Or helped make it so agile. That's about as clean as we're going to get that for now. So now the only thing we need to do now is to install more of these dummy nuts. So looking for the glue, found those. And just as before, actually what I'm going to do with this, to hold these and apply the glue to them. Try not to get too much glue on my hands, but I do have the barrier cream on, so that does help. And unlike the hubcaps for the main wheels, these don't need to be cut down. Try an alternative way of doing it. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I was just trying not to get too much glue on that, but that's probably the easiest way to do it. So, yeah, methods all differ. I've treated myself to a new cutting mat because this has seen a lot of action, and I'm sort of reluctant to use it at the moment because I'm still using a lot of glues, but I will be I'll be using that. So I know it's nothing to get too excited about. It's a cutting mat, but you know, I've had this for years, but it's been abused in a lot of the 3 tanks I've built. Right, so that's that, and that's done. So I'll go on and do the other one off camera, and then we'll come back and we'll do the idler wheel. Oh, actually, what I'll do is just show you how that looks on there. Let's make sure we put it. Obviously, it's going to be going with the recess. I think that looks quite smart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a means to mask off the hole where the locking bush goes in, and then on the back side of that I'll just put some masking tape over the back of this, because I'm not bothered if I don't get that painted. What's more important is just getting the outer ring painted. So I think that looks quite smart. So anyway, I'll do the other one and then we'll get on to the idler wheel. So here we have the 2 idler wheels and these little hubcaps. So I've gone ahead and just put the dummy studs on this hubcap here ahead of doing anything else, and they just screw in to position. And again, just a lovely piece of engineering, beautifully made piece by Armortek, and all it needs is a bit of cleaning up. So usual, just using a small tool just to get into the tight spaces, and we just need to make sure, as before, that we get, especially where the bearing is going to be glued into this hole here, sorry, is clean and free of any of that compound. You want to get that really good bond between the metal and the bearing. Especially these parts here where, you know, it's hard to clean. It's really important to try to get as clean as possible, because you want the paint to stick to that. I'm just looking through, I missed one here. And less important, but still should be cleaned, the inside of it, and then there's the back of that. And almost done. So for a few minutes work, good investment of time, get us to a situation where that, just missed that, that's better, that wheel was nice and clean. I don't know if you can compare the two, and I'll do the same with this. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the hubcap, this here, to protect the inner workings of that when it comes to painting. Screws nicely in and out of that, and we just go and clean the part where the bearing's going to go into. It's a lovely piece of engineering. Nice big. It starts off obviously with a block of aluminium, and it just cuts away all that I mean, I don't know if you get a chance, but if you go onto Armortek's website, they post videos all the time of manufacturing components, and it's just, if you're into engineering, it's a fascinating watch. Just want to try and get this as clean as possible, and quite satisfying actually when you see the highly polished finish of the aluminium coming through once you've cleaned all that compound off. Very simple process. Just checking I haven't missed anything. I haven't. And that is it. So now we can start thinking about putting our bearings in. Obviously the bearing's going to go in both sides of this. Same process for both. That's already got a nice chamfered edge on this corner here, so shouldn't be any issues with that. Just going to get a bit of kitchen towel or paper towel to dry the inside of that off. Really important to get that good adhesion. Both sides of this idler wheel. Always nervous at this point because obviously we're dealing with bearings that have to be glued in, so I'm just going to see if that's going to cause me any problems. Difficult to tell. I think that's going to be alright as it happens. This side. Lovely, that goes in nice. Just want to check that side one more time. And that could be a bit tight, but there's nothing I can do about that. So because I can't get anything in there because of the thread, I do not want to damage the thread of this, so that might have to be a bit of a brute force. There we go, that goes in there lovely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bearings in the back of these, the back of the wheel, let them go off, and then use that bearing to guide my dowel so I can slide the bearing over the dowel, try and keep it, as the key is to try and get it as square as possible. So when I say square, is so it goes in super straight. Any little crank on the angle as it goes in will cause problems. So let's see if this goes in as easy as it did before. That's very satisfying when that goes in nice like that. I'm just going to make sure that that's in, just pressing it down with my smaller wooden dowel. And what I'm saying is I'm going to use that dowel to pop through that bearing and use that to guide this bearing. That's the plan anyway. So we'll do this one next. Let's get a bearing out. Again, just using the nozzle of the tube there, just to sort of spread it around, try and get a nice even application. Just lining that up. Very satisfying again. That's nice. So we'll let those go off and give it a couple of minutes, and then we'll do the other side. Right, they're nicely set, I think. So I'm going to do what I said, just pop that wooden dowel through and place that flat on my bench. Now this isn't a perfect science, but this will hopefully help me get the bearing to sit carefully and straight into the hole. So that's the process, that's the methodology. Let's apply the glue and see if it works. Just always a bit nervous when it comes to this part, but we'll see. Should be all right. I have got my trusty little modelling mallet to hand, just in case. Let's just pop that, slide that down. Oh, that's gone in beautifully. The plan has worked. Really, really satisfying when it works like that. So that's a good way of getting it square. So that's that. And I'm just going to pop that so I don't misplace that. I'm just going to see that. Yeah, that screws in. Yes, well, it will screw in. Well, again, it needs to be really square. Don't cross thread it. There we go. Just need that should just go in very simple like that. You shouldn't have to force it in any way whatsoever. And if you do force it, then you're going to end up cross threading it. So let's hope we don't do that. And we're going to do exactly the same process on this one. Just getting that. I don't want to over apply glue to this. Just try to get that thin film all the way around. That's it. Same process. Let's hope it goes as well as the last one. Last bearing. Well, it's in square, but it's going to need some encouragement. It just needs a little bit. That's it, I think. Yeah. Wow, okay, that was nice and easy. Made a change. Sometimes these bearings can be hard work to get in. But anyway, that's not a bad tip. I think this is a 10 or 12 mil dowel. I think it's 10 mil dowel, wooden dowel through the bearing, and as you can see, that just helps you get these in nice and straight when they go in. So that is that. Now the only other thing I'm going to do in a moment is I will test fit these to the idler wheel axle, and I'm going to install the two little wheels on the top runner wheels on the tank, just because they're taking up room on my bench and I don't want to misplace them, and also I think they're going to be awkward. That would help, wouldn't it, if I screwed it in the right side, Tony? Classic. I just want to get this screwed in to see if I need to work any of the backs of these nuts off. I should do, really, because it's not sitting flush, so they'll have to be machined off, but I'm not going to do that just yet. So that's that. We'll go ahead and we'll put these two top rollers on. I want to go and we'll test fit the I'll turn the tank round so we can get it in camera, and we'll test fit the idler wheel just to see if they're all working fine. Right, so I'm just going to test fit the idler wheel onto the idler axle. Make sure it's the right way, threaded side out, of course. And that fits there lovely and spinning as it should. And what I'll do is I'll just zoom that in so you can see when we adjust, and then you can see that movement. Then we hold it, stop it from rocking. You see that moving backwards and forwards? That's how we tension the tracks. Obviously, when the tracks are on, there's going to be a lot more tension, and this will have to be a tool. I'm still thinking about the right tool to be able to get to that and adjust it, but that's moving exactly as it should, spinning exactly as it should. Really pleased with that. So now we'll do is I'm just gonna, the last thing I'm going to do in this session is to install the two little roller wheels onto the side of the tank. So I'll just reposition, well, I'll zoom out a bit, and then we can do that. Right, so we're just going to install the two little top rollers. You can only go one way. Well, if you make a mistake, you can put them the other way, I guess, but can only go one way, and that because it's the shaft is angled to compensate for the shape of the hull. So it can only go this way, and what I'm trying to do is just line up the holes. Initially, just try and get a couple of turns on that. Same with the opposite hole. That is a little bit awkward. I think that's it now. That's it. I just think it'll be a lot easier to paint this being on the tank, because I can turn the tank. I'm going to be turning the tank upside down as well when I come to paint it, and I can get to it rather than trying to hold it in my hand or put it on the bench, and also I don't want any paint getting onto the bearing. Now the bearing is now inside this housing, doing what it's supposed to be doing. That will run more freely than that, just because I've got a ton of masking tape around it to stop it from getting painted. So I'm just going to do the other side now. And again, this is probably where it goes horribly wrong. I know you're not going to be able to see. I'll tell you what I'll do actually, I will spin this around. That's the beauty of these motorcycle jacks. They make life so much easier when you're moving your model around. I mean, it's not got a huge weight to it at the moment, but it's still, awkward thing to handle. And it soon will start gaining weight, a bit like myself these days. But anyway, it will do as soon as all these components are installed after painting. So just see if we do this again one more. Just make sure you can see that in the camera. Awkward thing, just because of the hang on. Yeah, just talk amongst yourselves while I struggle. There we go. And just try and get that into the opposite hole. I think it's just because I'm trying to film this, and I'm making it awkward for myself. But anyway, it's there now, it's on. So that is it. Both of the top roller wheels are on. Still doesn't look much like a tank, but it will soon take shape. So I'll just reset the camera, and I'll do my signing off piece. So that's it for this session. Basically built the two sprockets, the both idler wheels, and we went on and built the two little top rollers for the track support. And really looking at, I've laid it out on the table here so you can see the amount of work that's gone into this over the last few sessions. And it's really important that you build these ahead of putting them onto the tank, because especially if you're going to be painting these. Now, not everybody paints these kits. I have seen them in their raw metal and they look really special, but I want to paint. I just think if you're going to do this, you might as well go the whole hog, paint in detail, and bring it to life. So anyway, having said that, by the time you see this next time, I would have had all of these elements painted. I would have painted the lower section of the hull. But what we'll do is we'll put all these elements will be installed. I'll film that in real time, so you can see how it all comes together. And then I'm looking forward to that, because it's really going to start taking shape from what it is now, just a really simple hull. All these parts onto the tank. When they're painted, it's going to look incredible. Obviously, I've got to put the rubber tyres on the wheels once they're painted, and a few other bits and pieces, and we'll get started on that as soon as possible. So thank you for watching me. Thanks for all your wonderful comments. Thanks for all your support. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you've just joined me, have just found my channel, please subscribe. And welcome, by the way. And I hope you do follow me, because there's a long way to go on this particular project. I have other projects in the pipeline, and I've done a previous build of the Tiger and the M26. I'm pointing at them, you can't see them, but they're here. So I'll just sign off by saying I'm Tony. I absolutely love building these kits from Armortek, and I can't wait to the next session, and I'll see you soon.